let's write some notes down about SAMR. So SAMR is, if we were to, I don't know, kind of try to like, and put an analogy to it and say in our, in our brains, like, what is it like? The closest thing that I can compare it to, and actually the experts or whatever compare it this way too, is to Bloom's, right? And we're all familiar with Bloom's taxonomy, the triangle, and moving from remembering, understanding to all the way up to creating, right? And so SAMR is sort of the equivalent when we talk about integrating technology or infusing technology into our teaching and learning. Okay, so and it really kind of has the same model, the downward or the, you know, starting at the bottom and working up to the top, and SAMR is kind of the same thing. And just like, you don't have to draw this, I'll just draw it just for effect here. You know, just like if you were to do a search for Bloom's, you know, it's pretty traditional to find that circle, or the triangle kind of model. In SAMR, this is kind of the most popular one. You'll see a diagram that kind of looks like that. But again, just like Bloom's, SAMR can be represented, I don't know, any kind of pictorial format that you want. Okay, so let's just do kind of just a little bit of who it comes from and where it comes from and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so first of all, SAMR is an acronym that stands for substitution, augmentation, modification, and redefinition. Okay, so it was developed, I guess, let's put it this way, developed by Dr. Ruben Puentedura. Okay, like so. Okay, in 2006. Okay, so as far as, you know, if we're thinking about Bloom's or Maslow's or any of those fancy educational theories or models, this one's relatively new, right? If you think about it, it's what, 17 years old, so not even 20 years old yet. And like Bloom's, it is, I think, an important model for us to think about every single time that we want to use technology in the classroom. So it's developed by Puentedura in 2006 to help teachers integrate, I'll put it down here on another line, integrate technology. Okay, and you see how, again, here I didn't use the word computers, right? Because we're talking about any kind of technology. Integrate technology, and then I'm going to use the word that I like to always sort of add myself, appropriately, right, into teaching. We'll say and learning, teaching and learning. Okay, and I use the word, I always use that word, you know, in our definitions, appropriately, because I can think of countless examples of teachers not using technology appropriately, right? And I mean, I could give you, I mean, I'm guilty of this too, and I'm sure probably 98% of the teachers in the world are, that have technology in their classrooms, is that, you know, go ahead, kids, and just have free time, you know, and there's nothing wrong with doing free time, but really, honestly, if you think about it, that's not really the most appropriate use of technology in the classroom. So anyways, appropriately. Okay, all right. So then that's kind of like point number one here. We'll come down here for another one. The model, right? So this is SAMR, the model of SAMR. The model allows teachers to evaluate, okay, how they are using technology in their, I'll say, using tech in their instructional practices. Okay, so just like on our brain lesson plan templates, how we have that column on the right-hand side for Bloom's level, when we talk about we're going to use technology in the classroom, and I mean anything from, you know, your basic, like a calculator, all the way up to, I don't know, some fancy computer or projector, or, you know, whatever, think fancy, you know, VR technology or whatever, something fancy, right? It allows you then to think about, just like Bloom's does, where am I at on the hierarchy? And am I staying down here at remembering and understanding all the time? Or am I moving my students up to more critical thinking and that sort of area where we really want kids to engage with their brains, right? Okay. And then SAMR kind of does the same thing. And again, just kind of makes you conscious of where you're at, what you're doing, and are you always at the same levels, right? Again, you want to move from low to high. Okay. So let's make a new page here on my screen. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw you a diagram, or we're going to draw a diagram of SAMR, sort of the traditional one that, again, that you probably would see on the web. And I am going to go with different colors. So I got them all the ones I need here. Yellow. Oh, I don't have orange. That's okay. We'll get it anyways. Okay. I'm going to start with these kind of rounded rectangles at the bottom, and I'm going to start with a yellow one. So we're going to go like so, and you can, doesn't matter really what color I do. I'm just kind of doing it in color because I have that option. Okay. So again, at the bottom is substitution. Substitution. Okay. And at this level, when we talk about technology, the technology acts as a direct substitute, comma, with no functional change, with no, and I'm going to put no in capital letters and underline it there, no functional change. Okay, so I can give a couple examples here, and I'll give more and more examples as we go. A couple examples could be instead of, you know, having your students on a piece of paper go 4 + 4 = whatever, they would take a calculator out and use a calculator to, you know, solve, you know, some math problem or equation. Okay. Or if you wanted to think of it this way, we could say, okay, and I'll use book report as an example. It's sort of my classic example. We're going to do a book report on, you know, whatever, pick whatever book, it doesn't matter. And we've got kind of two options, right? In this day and age, we can have kids write it out by hand on, you know, on a piece of paper or some type of maybe a graphic organizer, but it's printed out, it's on paper, and I have my students writing it out, coloring it, doing whatever you want with it, right? Or I could say, get out your Chromebooks and create a brand new doc or a drawing or a slideshow, whatever, and we're going to call it book report. Okay. So think about what we've just done there. We've moved from paper-based, non-digital, analog, right, situation to a digital situation. But there's really no big, huge change. Instead of writing, all we're doing is typing. Okay. Now, don't get ahead of ourselves and go, Brad, what about, okay, because we're going to get there, okay? So basically, that's what we're talking about. We're going from paper to keyboarding, okay? And the thing. And again, if you think about the definition, it acts as a direct substitute. So I'm substituting keyboarding for writing, but there is really not much of a functional change, okay? In the end, we're going to get words on a page kind of idea, okay? The next one up, let me just... okay, hold on here. Why is that bugging me like that? I need blue. I don't really need red. So let me choose. Let me make that one orange. There we go. All right. So our next, let's draw another little box, kind of the same idea that we've got here. Okay. And this one is augmentation. Augmentation. Okay. And here we're going to say that tech acts as as a direct tool substitute with functional improvement. Okay, and I'll explain that for a second. With functional improvement. Okay. What's the functional improvement? And that's where I was saying don't get ahead of yourself here, because now we have, and we'll just use Google Docs as an example. We could use any word processing software, really. Doesn't matter. And so what is that functional improvement? Well, that functional improvement is my ability to spell check, grammar check, and all those other kinds of checks that you want. You know, just thinking basic tools, bolding, italicizing, underlining, changing the color of things, that kind of idea. So there is some functional improvement in that book report. Okay, so we could use you know, that as our really good example. Okay, what I'd like you to do now, because we're going to have two more kind of, I don't know, rounded rectangles here, is I'd like you to, and I'm just going to use a color, but you can do anything you want here, is I want you to put like a line here. Okay, it's probably the world's worst line, but there we go. Okay, because again, and you don't have to draw this, I'll just as for effect. Remember, on Bloom's taxonomy, we have the lower three here, and then we have the top three, and if we include sharing, we'd have a fourth. But remember, up here we have HOTS, right? Remember, higher order thinking skills, and down below the low pardon me, the lower three are lower order thinking skills, right? So we're going to have the same kind of idea. We're not calling them HOTS and LOTS, but we'll have the same kind of idea here when we're working with SAMR. Okay, let me just undo all my little things here. There we go. Oop, 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 oop. Got a little too carried away there. There we go. Okay. Next bubble up is, and again, you don't have to do these in color, but I'm going to do mine. Next one is blue. All right, something like that. And this one is modification. Modification. Okay. And on this one, tech allows for significant task redesign. Hold on here, let me just clean that up a little bit. There we go. Task redesign. Okay, so again, if we stick with our book report using word processing software, here is where it allows us to do things like share it with a peer or post it to, and we use Google Classroom as an example because it's our platform that we've been using all semester. It allows you to maybe post it to Google Classroom and maybe even in the stream and have peer feedback. So if we think about Madeline Hunter, we talk about peer teaching, we could have peer editing and those kinds of things. And of course, I've used peer editing in many different forms in the past in teaching in K-12, and it's very powerful because it gets kids thinking about what their paper should look like or what, you know, their partners or whoever. So it allows us to do some things like that. Now, when we get to the redefinition stage or level, right up here, that's where we really get to the good stuff. Okay, hold on, pardon me for one second. Sorry, everyone. All right. This is the R in SAMR, and this is redefinition. So we can go definition. Okay, and this is where tech allows for the creation of, and pay attention to that word, right? Top of Bloom's taxonomy, create, right? So for the creation of new tasks previously all right, inconceivable. And if you're thinking like me, you'd be thinking, I know that word. That word comes from dun, 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 Princess Bride, right? Okay. Okay. So we're not quite done the diagram yet. We just got to add a couple things, and that's to do with our line here. So when we're below the line in the orange and yellow with substitution augmentation, Pontedera says what you are doing when you are using technology as a substitute for traditional pen and paper analog is that you are enhancing the task. Okay, so it's enhancement that happens here. Enhancement. Okay, so we have some change, but it's really not crazy change until we get up to the top two, where what we're looking at here is transformation. So, and I'll talk about that here in 1 second here about the green bubble. Transformation. Sorry, it was a little longer than I wanted it to be, but it is what it is. So now we are, if we look at the green bubble, it allows for the creation of new tasks previously inconceivable. So there is this transformation in the book report that you would not be able to do in a normal situation. And we could include parts of modification in that, the whole sharing idea, and not only just sharing it with your buddy next to you at your desk or table or whatever, but I'm talking in the whole wide world, right? So remember, sharing is the top, the new kind of top part of Bloom's taxonomy. Same kind of idea here is that the whole idea of sharing with the technologies that we have today, we can share anything, right? And you all know that on social media and all that kind of stuff, right? But not only that, but we could also instead of saying, okay, let's just do a peer review or a peer editing or whatever, you could be writing a book or a book review about a book and have the author chime in and give you their 2 cents worth, right? So we've got that piece. But what we really have here too is doing things that you couldn't again really do on a paper-based report. For example, here's where I'm going to take this assignment, is I'm going to have my students record, using whatever tool they want, right? A 1 minute book review about their book. So we're going to have a video, okay? And of course, the kids are going to, just like you did, you're going to post your video to YouTube or to their YouTube channel, okay? And then what they're going to do is, with the URL that goes with that book report and that YouTube video, they are going to create a QR code. And what they're going to do is they're going to take those QR codes with their book, either in the classroom library or in the school library, and now they're going to slap that QR code on the inside of the cover of the book. And so when a student pulls the book off the shelf, they can open it up, they can scan it with whatever tech they want, and they can get a 1 minute book review from a peer or somebody that is their own age about that book, right? So that is kind of stuff that you couldn't really do if we're just writing a good old-fashioned paper book report. So you can see how I took them from this traditional paper book report thing all the way up to this video QR code exchange of information, right? And of course, with that video, the other part of that is you all know you can share it however you want to share it. So you could make it, Mr. McDee's class book reviews, and publish that to a website, and people could come and scan the QR codes, other kids, and they could also find out about the book from somebody their own age. So again, there's a whole set of redefinition. At the redefinition level, if you really think about anything that could be included under the term multimedia, that's kind of where that transformation piece happens. Okay. All right. Thoughts about that? Questions? No? Everybody's good? Okay. Let me scooch down here my notes, and we are going to just write a couple more things down here about SAMR. All right. I need a new page. All right. So on this, we can say that now that we have this visual of what it looks like, we can say that SAMR provides a framework to support, right, educators or teachers, if you want to use that word instead, educators, in creating, okay, there's our word again here, top of Bloom's taxonomy, in creating optimal learning experiences. Learning experiences, I'm going to abbreviate that there, using technology, let's put tech down here. Okay. And again, we started, the other example we started was with, using a calculator, right? If you scooched all your way up to redefinition, you could be saying using, spreadsheets or some fancy graphing calculator or something like that, that would give you a visual of what you're doing versus just, the old fashioned calculator, right? So again, we could move ourselves up that way as well. Okay. All right. So there's that one. And let's just go here. And we're going to go, SAMR is used. Okay. And we really honestly could put in the word here, Bloom's is used. SAMR is used to encourage, right, teachers or educators, whatever word you want to use there, to move up from lower to higher levels of teaching with technology, with technology. Okay. So again, like I said, we could almost use Bloom's in there. You could say Bloom's is used to encourage teachers to move up from lower to higher levels of, let's say, thinking in their teaching, something like that, right? So you could almost use Bloom's as just a direct substitute word there. Okay. So again, same idea. We want to move from low-level use of technology to things that really are meaningful to kids in not only the moment, but also later on as they get older and use technology in more sophisticated ways. Okay. All right. So the goal is to create, there's that word again, right? Create lessons, right? So think about lesson planning, lessons that allow for the ability, right, to facilitate lessons that practice redefinition. Practice redefinition. Okay. Okay, I got a little bit more there, but I've run out of room here. So I'll just leave that on there for a second to continue on with one more sentence, but I just don't have room. Okay, I'll go ahead, and if anybody needs me to come back, I can go back. So let me add a new page here. Okay, so here again, we ended off with a practice redefinition. Okay, and then you can continue on in the same kind of bullet point if you want. At the same time, oh, that's a horrible. Let's see here, sorry. At the same time, comma, we must remember, let's see, remember that all of the stages, allow for technology interaction and increased student engagement. Okay, so again, not that none of the other levels are important, just like in Bloom's, you can't get to create and sharing at the top of Bloom's pyramid unless you've worked your way through the other levels. And so SAMR is kind of the same thing. You can't tell kids, okay, hey, I want you to make a book report and shoot a video and make it a QR code and put it in a library book unless you kind of move them up from one stage to the other. Okay, and so we have to remember that all those stages are important and that kids learn things that they would need to take them to the next level. And of course, we know, or we should know, that in our educating world, that's called scaffolding, right? Is that we build, the next level so they can move up, and then we build the next level so they can move up, just like in construction and, scaffolding on the side of a building. Same idea, okay? So here's just like a new point. If technology, and again, I'm using technology meaningfully, if technology is implemented correctly, right? Or I could use my word appropriately, correctly, comma, it can amplify the learning experience. Amplify the learning experience. Okay. And then just kind of going back kind of to my previous statement about here that all levels are important, we can write this down just so that we don't lose sight of it and think that we always have to be up at top levels, right? There are times, and this is the same thing with Bloom's, there are times where simple substitution, and I'm going to write this in all caps, substitution, okay, is all that is needed, and is most appropriate given the learning outcome. And again, what I'm going to do on that one, there we go, is use math as an example, right? So I can use substitution, and again, just having kids use a $1 calculator from the dollar store kind of idea to check their answers on a math worksheet, right? So simple substitution, given the learning outcome, which is students will add 1-digit by 1-digit numbers to get a sum, is what my learning outcome is. And you know what? just using a plain old calculator is fine. I don't need to be using spreadsheet or some graphing calculator or some other fancy tool. I just need the good old, like I said, the good old fashioned $1 calculator from the dollar store. So there are times where substitution is all that is needed. Okay. All right. One little other bullet point here. Let me just go to a new page here. See, there we go. Stop it. There we go. Okay. So let's type a new bullet point here. As educators become familiar with SAMR, comma, let's put it this way. The model allows them, let's say it allows teachers, allows educators or teachers, educators to reflect, right? There we go. TQS number 2, to reflect and evaluate. Okay. Right. Think of Bloom's taxonomy. Second from the top, evaluate their technology integration practice while striving for powerful learning experiences. Powerful learning experiences. Okay. And again, same idea can be applied to Bloom's, right? As educators become familiar with Bloom's, the model allows educators to reflect and evaluate about their teaching, right? Am I always using the low level stuff? When am I using the higher level stuff? Or when should I use the higher level stuff? So all of those kind of things help us become better teachers and make the learning experience better. Okay. So I'm just going to switch through my notes here because some of this stuff is we've already kind of talked about. Right. Well, if we think about the level of augmentation, one of the other things that you can think of or implement are things like speech recognition. Right. So again, in a Google Doc, I don't have the keyboard. Right. I can go to, what was it? Can I go to? I can go to Tools. I can go to Tools, and about, I don't know, let's say halfway down or so is voice typing. So that is an augmentation. Is that speech recognition, voice to text or text to voice? Either way is augmentation. Okay, so, and we can use that. It is simple for us to use. The other thing that you could, that falls in the augmentation level is word count, right? Students always ask me, how many words does it have to be, Brad? Or how many pages does it have to be, right? So word counting, right? I think that's just Command Shift and C will tell you the word count of your document on a Google Doc, right? So that kind of idea. We talked about spreadsheets, right? And things like, let's think about just student research, right? I mean, we hardly do this anymore, and I don't know if it's good or bad or sad or whatever, is that, going to the library to do research and pulling books off the shelf and, opening them up and finding out what other people said. But, one of the sort of direct substitutions for that or way to augment that would be online, right? Online news, online blogs, those types of things where kids could go out and do that kind of stuff. Where else? Do I have another example for that? Right? We haven't. Okay. Let me just. Oh, here, I'll give you one more example of the whole process. So let's say, I don't know, let's say social studies class. Okay. It could be other classes as well. But so what's happening at your school is your parent council has raised enough money to put in a brand new playground equipment and change the playground and make it better, right? So as part of this, what the parent council has asked all the teachers in grade, I don't pick an appropriate grade, probably Division 2 from grades 4 and up, is on a piece of paper. What I'd like you to do is I'd like you to draw your perfect playground, right? What kind of trees would it have? What kind of climbing like equipment would it have? All those kinds of things, right? So we could use graph paper, we could use some kind of paper for students just to draw that out, and they could color it. Those of you that are in Ed 1500 or are Ed 1500 grads, if you think about personal perspective 2, where you have to design the layout of your classroom, same kind of idea. You could draw it on a piece of paper, or you could use some tech to substitute drawing it by hand, right? And many of you would use Google Drawing, and there's lots of other different softwares out there, but that kind of idea. So not only do we have to have this graph paper design, but we also have to have a letter that gets written to the mayor and to the president of the student council stating why their design should be the one that they choose to use. So we're going to have this sort of almost like a competition in all of the grade, again, pick whatever 4, 5, 6, 7, I don't know, like whatever grades you want, stating why their design is the best and why it should be chosen. So we've got kind of combining two things here. We've got these sort of graphic skills like drawing, and then we've got this letter writing campaign that also is, you know, language arts, social study kind of idea, right? So substitution would be, I think on this one, is instead of kind of going to a book-based idea of finding out information, we could literally just say, okay, we're going to do some Google searches on, you know, playgrounds, you know, the perfect playground, optimal playground, best playgrounds for elementary schools, that kind of stuff, right? Also, we have to think about not only the equipment, but what about plants? Are there plants that are going to be poisonous? Are we going to have water? What are we having at the park? So there's a lot of things that have to happen at the substitution level, sort of the planning level, right? And then if we're going to augment that process, then that process goes to, let's say, we're going to scale this up, and instead of drawing on paper, we're going to create our plans on a smart board or some other interactive whiteboard and use the tools that come with that technology to create this drawing that we want. And of course, instead of writing a letter, we have them type a letter out to the people who are going to fund this. Okay, so we've got this augmentation stage, and we can move on to modification. And again, in modification, we instead of even a typed letter, let's move into a multimedia presentation. Whether, and again, you pick your multimedia tools you want there, audio, video, you know, animations, those kinds of things. And so we're going to do that instead of the letter and this, you know, the old-fashioned kind of way to do that. So they create this multimedia presentations on why their park should be chosen. You know, they have images, videos, animations, that kind of stuff, showing that design of their park. And then the last, like, we're going to take it to the highest level to redefinition. Think about then using 3D computer assisted design tools like Tinkercad. So now instead of, you know, even with a multimedia presentation or a whiteboard or a smart board, I mean, or is you're still flat, right? So if we use a program like Tinkercad, now we've got 3-dimensional objects that people can move around and twist on all the different axes and that kind of stuff. So they can create this 3D version of their design. And then they can use other tools there to help present it and share it with the world. So we've moved from a simple drawing on a piece of paper and a handwritten letter to using 3D CAD software and that kind of stuff. And you could even move it farther and say we could 3D print the playground equipment and all of the flowers and stuff around it and have this other type of 3D model as well. So again, just some other examples of moving from, you know, pretty basic stuff that we do in the classroom to more important things that, again, take kids to these higher levels of thinking. Okay, we got, what, 1, 2, 3 more sentences to write, and then the SAMR notes are over. I'm just going to start it on a new page. Maybe I can get it all there. So this next little title is going to be called SAMR and blooms. So I've been making these comparisons back and forth all the way through. So let's write down some stuff here. SAMR and Bloom's. Okay. And like I said, we've got about 3 sentences here. Bloom's. Okay. There we go. All right. So, great. We in both models, I'm going to paraphrase my notes here a little bit. In both models, we strive to reach the top levels of the model, right? And this is just higher order thinking skills, right? And everything that goes with that, critical thinking, all that kind of stuff. All right, that's sentence number 1. Sentence number 2. Each approach outlines a clear set of steps, right? And when we talk about these steps, this hierarchy, right? That help guide the introduction of technology into the classroom. Okay. And not that technology is a foreign thing. They're like, what's technology? What do we do? Right. We all very familiar with that. But it is maybe a reintroduction of the appropriate use of technology into your classroom. Okay. And then the last little here is, I'm just going to go SAMR, helps to avoid the pitfalls of, and I'm going to use this word here, I don't know, kind of has a bit of a negative connotation, but that's okay, of self-deception, right? Kind of telling yourself that what you're doing is using, this is the appropriate use for technology when maybe it's not. Okay, so SAMR helps to avoid the pitfalls of self-deception, comma, I'm just going to go, for example, I'm not going to have enough room on my little page here, so I'll have to switch. For example, comma, okay, give you a second to catch up with me if you're not. Okay, for example, assuming that a particular task is at a higher level, in either Bloom's or SAMR. Than it actually is. Okay. So with Bloom's, we have cognitive, affective, and psychomotor domains. And with each one of those domains comes these long lists of verbs that we can use to see if we're doing what we should be doing and at what level we're at, right? And again, even when you look into the programs of study and you pick any subject you want, they are using Bloom's verbs to describe or the, you know, the action of whatever the students are supposed to be doing, right? So remember, you know, students will be able to, and then the verb comes after that, right? Define, describe, create, those kinds of words, right? And then with SAMR, it's the same idea where we're thinking about, is what we're doing with this technology something that was previously inconceivable? And so one of the things we have to think about with that word is, in this day and age, is it really inconceivable for students to make a QR code or a video? It's not. But if you think about 20 years ago, it would have been inconceivable. Really, the technology was, yeah, I mean, you could do it, but you really needed some high-end tech. And nowadays, man, you just need a phone or even just a Chromebook to do, you know, that exact thing that I was talking about. And even with that, the internet or the you know, the web wasn't developed in the same way 20 years ago as it is today, where there's so much information. You can find anything you need about anything, right? So kind of previously inconceivable.